we are going to have 9 to 15% inflation annually for a minimum of 5 years. Now, before you have a stroke and call your broker, deep breath. If we do this, if we pull it off, we will have supply chains that are at home, that employ people on this continent, that serve people on this continent. The supply chains will be simpler with fewer steps, that are cleaner, you lose less energy, are more highly skilled, are more efficient, and will be largely immune to international shocks. And we will exit that 5-year transition period with the strongest economy that Mexico, Canada, and the United States have ever seen. And we will have 5 years of the fastest growth in the history of all 3 countries. Or we can still have that inflation and after 5 years not have stuff, which means we have more inflation. From my point of view, this is a really easy call. But I'm not the decision maker. That would be you. No pressure. All right. I think we're past that. Politically, I think the United States is mostly done. And if you look at who we've elected since 1989, we've gone with progressively more populist presidents all the way up until Biden. But the economic issue, I don't think is sustainable anymore anyway. It was one thing when we did this in 1945, because everyone else in the world was basically wrecked, and our economy was bigger than the rest of the world put together. That's not the world we're in. We've been indirectly subsidizing most of the world for 75 years now. And that has allowed countries who don't have the geography or the access to raw materials or the access to markets to become significant. And the top of that list, of course, is China. So if we could do a share and turn back some time and go back to 2001, there was a moment under George W. Bush when we were trying to basically, this is going to sound a little jaded, but beat Russia and China into shape and say, the Cold War system is over. We're entering a fundamentally new era. We need to renegotiate the terms of globalization. And if you do that, great, we're all in this together. And if you don't, we will bury you. And then 9/11 happened. And we got a little distracted for 20 years. And in that time, we maintained enough of the structures of globalization that all these places that had poor geographies kept growing. And now collectively, they're twice our size. We can't subsidize things of that size. Unless, of course, we want to spend all of our national blood and treasure making sure that China is the unassailable superpower. I don't think that's going to fly. No, because you remember ours, right? Ours are pretty good. I mean, we're still aging and we still have these distortions when we go from the big boomers to the small Xers to the big millennials to the small Zers. But these are problems we can manage over time. In addition, we are partnered with Mexico, which has the healthiest demography, not just in the rich world, but in the advanced developing world as well, better than India, better than Indonesia or Turkey. And so if there were 2 countries that were better positioned to do well, it would be those 2. And the fact that they're already linked together in a trade deal. I mean, there are a lot of things about Donald Trump I was not a fan of. NAFTA 2 was freaking brilliant, and it's done. It's embedded into the system. And this political sniping that we see around the world in our own country doesn't really apply to NAFTA. I mean, Biden and the Mexican president, AMLO, they loathe each other personally, professionally, ideologically, and they just got done with the Three Amigos Summit. It was the most successful summit we have had with NAFTA since 2006. So this is a relationship that works, and no one else has something like that. So will I mourn Europe when it's gone? Yeah, because that's less than 20 years away. But time isn't going to stop. And courtesy of none other than Donald Trump, we now have a multiracial future of cooperation. And that just feels weird. But that's where we are. Yeah, I mean, France will last longer. France has a demography that's a lot more like ours. So, you can put off going to Paris for a few years, it'll still be there. But if you're going to go to Germany, honestly, you are running out of time. As long as you think of oil and gas as a source of income as opposed to a source of electricity, it's a negative because you're kind of going to get that whole, the Dutch disease, where you're over-dependent on one specific thing that's cyclical in its demand. But if you use it to do other things, well, holy crap, there's not a whole lot of sectors that you couldn't go into. The biggest problem that you guys have is you just don't have another population center that's near you. And that makes it really difficult for you to synergize and achieve economies of scale. And that's why I think you should go into processing, because you have something here that is bottled up. And so for you, and mostly only for you, it's at a cost structure that no one else can match. You should use that. I'm not saying you shouldn't try, but you're going to be a very small minnow in a pond that is not close to you. And that's a very risky proposition. So will there be niche things that you can expand into? Sure, but I don't think you're going to be able to do it at scale. But if you build out the things that allow manufacturers to function, you will be absolutely indispensable. And it's far better for you to own Texas than the other way around. We're going to bitch and we're going to moan, but we're going to be fine. Let me go through this one group at a time. Okay, baby boomers, they're retiring, but they are going to have the voting capacity to make sure that no one takes away their benefits for at least another 15 years. Damn it. Gen X, small generation, we're now the capital providers. One of the reasons that the baby boomers have been a little bit stressed out and very willing to vote themselves benefits is their money has been out competing, it's been oversupplied. The rate of return has been really low. That's going to reverse with Gen X. So Gen Xers that are able to invest are probably going to see the biggest returns in financial history for the next 15 years. It will be a fight to make sure that the government doesn't take it, and the boomers will try. Don't let them. Millennials, a little late to the start, but they're now having kids in numbers. They are literally the future. And the millennials they've got a lot of negative connotations, and I could talk for an hour on that. Let's focus on the positive. They're congenial, they're cooperative, they're collaborative, they're good at the touchy-feely skills, they're great managers. They are the people who will not just solve problems, but manage everything, and they've got the personal characteristics necessary to do that at scale. And they're consumers. Then you've got Gen Z, the new kids. Gen Z were not millennials. So, the millennials were raised by the boomers, and they were told that they were special, and we don't keep track of the score at the soccer game, and this gave them very high senses of self, which can be a problem, but this is why they're so open and friendly and cooperative. The Zoomers are the children of Gen X, and we raised our kids knowing that Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security would never be there for them, and we know that you can trust no one. And you have to be better than everyone, not better than the millennials, that's easy. And you have to put in the hours, and then you have to put in more hours, and you can't rely on anyone. So they are pathologically hard workers, and they're very loyal to their employers because they see their employers as giving them a lifeline. But they never want to meet you. Their dream job is to work in a closet that locks from the inside. So if you need coders, we've got a whole generation ready to go. But if you want anything else, you got to turn to the millennials. This is a cultural mix that can really work. I mean, there are negatives about every generation, there are positives about every generation, but at the age bracket we're in right now, we're going to have a highly productive financial sector. We're going to have rock bottom prices for IT because of the Zoomers. And in the middle, managing all the details, you've got people who actually like to be in the same room together. This works. Everywhere else, the boomers are leaving and there's no one else to pick up the baton.